You got mail.
It is from the Malaysian embassy. Why are they asking us to meet in Paju? Let's find out. Oh, there is here? I didn't know about this. A very special place symbolizing the relationship between Korea and Malaysia. I'm going to go and see for myself. That is why I'm off to Paju today. Paju is located in the northwestern part of Gyeonggi-do Province. It borders North Korea, and Panmunjom is also located here. I have finally arrived at Jori-eup in Paju. And let's go find our destination. I don't know the exact location, so I'm going to ask some local residents.
안녕하세요. 저 혹시 길 좀 여쭤봐도 돼요? 말레이시아교가 어느 쪽이에요?
That is right. Today's destination is Malaysia Bridge in Paju.
네, 혹시 말레이시아교 어딘지 아세요?
이쪽에
이쪽으로 얼마나 걸어가면 되나요? 5분?
빨리 가면 얼마 안 걸려요.
아, 그래요?
신호 지나서 우리 다리가 있어요.
아, 네.
그 말레이시아기예요.
아, 네. 저 학생들 혹시 말레이시아교 어디 있는지 알아요? 저쪽으로? 아, 거기 가봤어요? 어.
지나가는 길에
지나가는 길에. 고마워요. 안녕. 갑시다.
All the people I have met here seem to be well aware of Malaysia Bridge. Then let's head to Malaysia Bridge now. It is in this direction. Do you see the sign? I think we are almost there now. And the person waiting for us in front of the bridge is
Ambassador. Hello, hi.
안녕하세요.
the ambassador of Malaysia.
We are meeting for the first time and we are meeting at a very interesting place.
Yes.
So could you please tell us about this place for our viewers?
Okay, this place is actually a Paju Bridge. It was finished in 1966, so it was built with the help of the Malaysian government. So basically, this is to show our solidarity with the South Korean people who had undergone through a big war.
After the Korean War, South Korea was poorer than any other country in the world, and the land was in ruins. In 1953, South Korea's GDP was only 1.3 billion US dollars. After the war, South Korea received a lot of aid from the international community. And the Malaysia Bridge was also built with aid from Malaysia.
경기도 파주군 등원리에 말레이시아교가 준공되어 지난 19일 개통되었습니다.
Malaysia, which established diplomatic relations with South Korea in 1960, provided $5,000 to South Korea. In addition, Gyeonggi-do Province and Paju-si provided subsidies, and on November 19, 1966, the Malaysia Bridge, which is 60 meters long and 7.5 meters wide, opened. Then what kind of memories do the local residents have of Malaysia Bridge?
저는 1952년생이고요. 이 마을에서 태어났습니다. 아버님은 피란민이시고
Mr. Yoon Seok-jae lived here all his life. He even took part in the opening ceremony for the Malaysia Bridge, which took place in 1966.
중학교 2학년 초기쯤 될 거예요. 그래갖고 전교 학생이 동원이 돼서 왔었어요.
유동을 연결하는 이 다리는 말레이시아국에서 보내온 원자금 5,000달러.
다리가 이렇게 놔줬다니까 내가 항상 이용하는 데니까 좋았죠. 밑으로 비만 오면 밑으로 못 다녔었는데 옛날에는 그 납작다리라고 그래갖고 개울 바닥에서 한 50cm 정도 되는 그 물 빠짐으로 해갖고 한 7, 8개 칸이 있어갖고 골로만 물 빠질 때는 위로 다니고 그렇지 못할 때는 돌아다녔어요.
어떻게요?
이 산 밑으로 해서
어.
길이 사람만 다니는 길밖에 없었어. 산 밑으로 해서 절로 이렇게.
The residents had to cross this Gyeonggi-do stream a lot. There was a market and a school across the bridge. They say that before the bridge was built, they had to take a long detour when it rained.
고맙죠. 이렇게 먼 주로다가 못 살 때, 진짜 우리가 못 살 때 그 우리나라를 위해서 여기 국민들을 위해서 해줬다는 게 얼마나 이게 좋은 일이에요. 말레이시아한테 나라한테 고맙게 생각을 해야죠.
The Malaysia Bridge not only connected two areas that could not be crossed, but also played a role in connecting the hearts of the people of Paju and Malaysia. It is a historic place symbolizing the relationship between the two countries. We've come this far, we should cross the bridge.
At that time, it could be considered as a big bridge because even in Malaysia, at that time in 1960s, we didn't have that many bridges. In fact, people in Malaysia, when they come to a river, they have to cross the river by ferry. Yes, this is in 1960s. So,
As I was walking along the bridge, I became curious. Why did Malaysia decide to provide aid to South Korea at that time?
this is also show our solidarity and also our sacrifice for the Korean people because we know that the Korean people at that time were having a difficult time just after the war and also a lot of other problems.
Is this your first time visiting this bridge?
This is my first time, but I have heard so much about the bridge. I wanted to come here, and I'm so happy that finally I'm able to come here and watch for myself what it's all about. So basically, I'm quite impressed.
As I was walking across the bridge with the ambassador, I discovered something else that was interesting. There is an intersection that connects to the bridge, and do you see the name?
And actually, this intersection is called the Malaysia intersection.
Ah,
You could
okay,
see
all right.
the sign there.
I see.
I think this is really fascinating.
Yes,
Right?
yeah. So I hope with this bridge and also the intersection, Malaysia can be more well known by the Korean people.
Yes.
Completed in 1966, Malaysia Bridge was designated as a registered cultural property of Gyeonggi-do Province in 2021. So how did Malaysia Bridge become a cultural property, and how did the intersection in front of it come to be called Malaysia Bridge intersection? Let's meet someone who can answer this question.
자원조사라는 거를 2016년도에 했어요. 우리 마을에 어떤 게 있나, 숨겨진 보물이 뭐가 있을까? 9개를 찾아냈는데 그 중에 하나가 우리가 몰랐던 사실이 말레이시아교였던 거죠. 말레이시아교가 도로가 나기 전까지는 그게 메인 도로였어요. 이제 새 도로가 나면서 부속다리가 됐던 거죠. 거기가 안에가 다 패여 있었어요. 철근 다 올라오고 콘크리트 다 까지고, 이제 우리는 이제 안타까워서 우리가 이제 보존을 하자 이거를. 근데 행정에서는 거기가 그 법상으로 도로로 나 있는 부속도로 돼 있어가지고 도로를 막을 수는 없다는 거예요. 기념물이나 문화재가 되면 이제 거기를 이제 보존할 수 있는 게 있더라고요. 그래서 도 문화재로 지정이 되게 이제 행정에도 우리가 막 민원을 넣고 막 그랬죠. 그래서 도 문화재로 지정이 되면서 저 다리를 이제 보존이 이제 시작이 된 거예요, 이제서.
The Malaysian Bridge was designated as a cultural property thanks to the efforts of the residents living in the area. As the local residents are preserving it with great care, I think it will be remembered as a more meaningful place in the future.
저 다리 명칭 옆이 사거리가 있잖아요. 그 사거리도 금촌 사거리라고 그랬어요. 지금은 말레이시아 앞 교차로 이렇게 돼 있거든요. 사거리라고. 도문화재로 지정이 되고 나서 말레이시아교 앞 사거리로 우리가 서명해서 바꾼 거지, 주민들이.
But why was the Malaysia Bridge built in Paju?
추정하건대 그때 당시에 6.25 때 참전국들이 참전 기념비나 역사의 현장이었으니까 여기 전투 현장이었고 전쟁의 역사가 많았던 지역이고 또 일본 국도가 지나가고 뭐 휴전선이 바로 있는 판문점이 파주에 있고 하니까 그 지역을 파주로 했을 거다.
So how do the local residents want Malaysia Bridge to be remembered in the future?
6.25하고도 연결된 역사의 현장이고 우리 말레이시아가 우리 파주 못 살던 시기부터 지금까지 다 지켜보던 거였고 말레이시아 다리를 통해서 우리 파주가 발전이 된 건 사실이고 이런 것들을 우리 좀 아이들이 다 좀 기억을 해서 뭐 호혜라고 그러잖아요. 서로 혜택을 주면서 잘 살자라는 그런 의미의 상징물이 됐으면 좋겠어요.
Sometimes people take friendship for granted.
Yes.
They think that friendship come just like that. Actually, friendship usually start with sometimes it's a slow process, and then people get to know each other, and they feel compelled to help friends.
Right.
So as the proverb goes, friends in need are friends indeed.
Right.
So in this case, back in 1960s, we proved that we are friends of South Korea by providing the bridge, which was needed by the people here at that time.
Right.
As I walked across the bridge, I also wondered how Korea and Malaysia established diplomatic relations at the time and how the bilateral relationship has developed since then. So we decided to switch locations and have a more detailed discussion about the relationship between the two countries. This is the Kwangtan Library located near the Malaysia Bridge. It is a library run by Paju City.
Ambassador, you were posted to Korea in the spring of this year.
Right.
Right. So have you adjusted well to life in Korea?
Oh yes, I would say so. Basically, Korea is a new country for me because before coming here, I had never been to Korea. This is my first time actually to be in Korea. So so far so good. In terms of workload, I would say it's quite a challenge because there's a lot more work here. But this is a sign of a good thing because that means we have a lot of interaction with South Korea. So politically, we have a lot of visits. A lot of Malaysian officials and also some Malaysian politicians come here. So that adds to workload. And in terms of economy, we have a very substantial trade between Malaysia and South Korea. Last year, the total amount of trade between the two countries reached $25 billion. So this is very substantial. In fact, South Korea is our 10th largest trading partner.
South Korea and Malaysia established diplomatic relations in February 1960. 2 years later, in May 1962, South Korea opened its embassy in Malaysia, and Malaysia opened its embassy in South Korea in April 1964. Since the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1960, the sector that has developed the most between Korea and Malaysia is the economy. The volume of trade between the two countries has steadily increased, and in 2022, it reached a record high of $26.7 billion. Compared to 1965, it has increased by a whopping 9,400-fold. The two countries have signed various trade agreements, such as the ASEAN-Korea FTA and RCEP, while negotiations for a Korea-Malaysia bilateral FTA are also underway. In addition, regardless of industry, Korean companies are steadily advancing into Malaysia.
And in terms of people-to-people relations, we have a lot of visits by Malaysians in general and from South Korea who go to Malaysia just as tourists. So that adds to a lot of interactions.
So it is a good thing for our bilateral relations. But I have to say, I'm sorry for that. You have to work a lot.
Well, I try to find time to balance that.
So the Korean War Armistice was signed on July 27th, 1953. And in the past, the two Koreas were engaged in a diplomatic competition with each other.
After establishing their respective governments in 1948, the two Koreas engaged in fierce diplomatic warfare to secure their own national legitimacy. One way was to increase the number of countries with which they had diplomatic relations. As the Cold War began in the 1950s, neutral countries emerged that were not part of the two major Cold War blocs. In the early 1960s, North Korea was the first to establish diplomatic relations with neutral countries in Asia and Africa. South Korea also strengthened its diplomacy with neutral countries in order to gain more votes of support in the UN General Assembly.
So what was the relationship like between South Korea and Malaysia at that time?
Well, when the Korea War happened, and also after the armistice in 1953, basically Malaysia was not an independent country yet. So we didn't have any relations with Korea.
On August 31st, 1957, Malaya became independent from Britain, thus establishing the Federation of Malaya. In September 1963, the Federation merged with Singapore, North Borneo, or Sabah, and Sarawak to finally form Malaysia. 2 years later, in August 1965, Singapore separated from Malaysia to become an independent state, completing the current borders of Malaysia.
But after we gained independence in 1957, we started to look around, and at that time we had our own problem within Malaya at that time, that we had this communist insurgency. There were communist people who were declared as terrorists by the colonials, the British at that time. So we inherited the problem even after we gained independence in 1957. So basically, when we achieved the independence, we tried to find allies. So some of the allies, of course, is South Korea, because you had a problem with the communists at that time as well. So that's why we established our diplomatic relations in 1960, which is considered early. So I would say the relations were based on mutual trust in facing a common, not to say common enemy, but maybe common foe at that time, because we tried to fight off the communist insurgency at that time, and South Korea also felt that it should be closer to the countries, the like-minded countries. So from this modest beginning, I would think that the relation has increased a lot. And in 1970s, I remember when I was a kid, there were a lot of friendly matches of football between South Korea and Malaysia, and we still remember those times. So I would say our relations at that time were based on mutual trust. And although South Korea is outside of Southeast Asia, although it is outside of Southeast Asia, but we always see South Korea as our friends. When back in early 2000, we have this ASEAN plus 3 countries, so it was Malaysia. I'm not saying that it's just Malaysia, but Malaysia was one of the vocal countries who support the creation of ASEAN plus 3 mechanism. So because of our affinity with the people in East Asia. South Korea, Japan, and also China. So we really value that.
So the Malaysia Bridge was built in 1966.
Right.
And looking back at the history of the bilateral relationship, what other important turning points were there?
I think the turning point was in 1980s when the Prime Minister at that time, Tun Mahathir Mohamad, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, started to shift our foreign policy towards the East. So basically, we had Look East policy, whereby we wanted to learn more from countries in the East, including South Korea and Japan. We didn't want to rely too much on the West. So this helped foster closer relations between our two countries, Malaysia and South Korea, because we sent a lot of students to study in South Korea, not only in the universities, but also we send students to study technical and vocational education. And with this policy, we have, I think, more than 10,000 graduates from South Korea. And they help to expand this, the thinking of South Korean people and the work ethic of South Korean people. So this helped to build Malaysia as a country as well. And coming to year 2000, we still continue this Look East policy. In fact, recently the government has mentioned that they want to review this policy, not to stop it, but to add more scope to this policy. So they are reviewing it, but they will announce it later, maybe later in the year or maybe in early next year about the new Look East policy.
So when we explain diplomatic activities, we often use the expression bridge metaphorically. So I wonder if there is any place in Malaysia that symbolizes the bilateral relationship. So we have Malaysia Bridge in Korea, in Paju. So are there any bridges or buildings in Malaysia that symbolize our bilateral relationships?
There was a Penang Bridge built by a Korean company, although financially it was financed by Malaysia, but with the help of Korean technology. So Penang Bridge is very, very long. So I think Korean people should be proud of their technology to build such a long bridge. And also, if you know the Petronas Twin Towers, so one of the towers was built by South Korean companies. The other tower was built by the Japanese company. So they, at that time, they competed each other, who will finish first. And there is a bridge between the two towers. So this could be taken as one of the symbols of the friendship between Malaysia and Korea as well.
In Korea, there is the Malaysia Bridge, and in Malaysia, there is the Penang Bridge and the Sky Bridge connecting the Petronas Twin Towers. We could say that these are symbolic bridges between the two countries. So what other bridges do you think we need between Korea and Malaysia in the future?
So what kind of new bridges would you like to create?
What kind of
in the
new
future?
bridges? In the future, well, we don't want the relations to be static. Of course, the bridge can be used just as a metaphor, but what is important is the connection between the people, between the South Koreans and Malaysians. So this connection should be harnessed so that it will be so strong that it will not be broken. Just to use bridge as a metaphor. So I think we should have more people-to-people relations so that when people know each other better, so they feel the friendship, and then they also feel love between the people. And then let's say if something bad happen to one people in South Korea or also in Malaysia. So we feel compelled to help each other. So I think that is a lasting bridge that cannot be broken forever.
After the Korean War, when South Korea was going through hard times, Malaysia extended a helping hand, and as a result, the Malaysia Bridge was built. The Malaysia Bridge played an important role in the movement of goods and greatly contributed to the revitalization of Paju's regional economy. The friendship between the two countries started from this bridge, and I hope that through more exchanges between Korea and Malaysia in the future, the two countries will become closer. And as the ambassador said, an unbreakable connection will be built between the two countries.
Muhammad Zamruni bin Khalida.
So you're learning Korean?
I'm learning Korean.
Oh wow, good to know.
Yes.
So this is actually written backwards because it has to be.
Okay. All right. It's very interesting.
Yes.